Hey, it's Nikki. Before we start the show, I wanted to offer you a training course. The training course is all around business building because let's face it, business building is definitely a part of growing sales. And it's one that oftentimes people feel uncomfortable or unsure about. How do you approach that cold contact? Well, this training is authentic sales conversations. It lives inside my Sales Maven Society. And for you as the listener, I pulled it out, put it in a place where you can go and access it right now for free. So again, this is a training that people normally pay me money for, but I put it into a format that you can go and listen and watch this training for free and get the workbook that goes with it that actually gives you some script language of how to open those doors, how to warm up those cold leads. You can get the authentic sales conversation training right now by going to yoursalesmaven.com/building. So that's yoursalesmaven.com/building. Go download that, get access to it, go through the training. Even if you just implement one thing from there, you're going to make an impact in your business this year. So good luck. Now, when you're ready, let's start the show.
Are you ready to boost your confidence when selling so you're able to close more deals? Nikki Rausch will show you how to build a foundation of skills and a mindset that creates sales success without feeling pushy or salesy and without fear of rejection. She is a sales strategist and coach with more than 25 years of sales experience and is master certified in neuro-linguistic programming. This is a radically different approach to selling. It's a no sleaze, no slime, and no stress approach to building your business. This is Sales Maven. Here's Nikki.
Welcome, and thank you for listening to the Sales Maven Show. I'm your host, Nikki Rausch. I'm your own personal sales maven here to offer you tips, techniques, and strategies to master your sales conversations. Today's episode is a part of the Mastering Excellence series. So the Mastering Excellence series is something that I have devised as a way to bring in my background in neuro-linguistic programming, where we learn that there is a structure to excellence. So I am interviewing people who excel in a particular area of their life or business with the idea of, by asking this very specific questions, it helps get to the structure of how they do what they do really well. And when we can get to the structure, you can start to understand, okay, so what are the steps that you can apply to your own life so that you can also excel in this particular area? So today's guest, I'm very excited, is Cindy Lynn of Stage for More. Now, if you haven't met Cindy yet, I'm going to read her bio to you, and then I'm going to welcome her to the show. But Cindy Lynn is a home staging educator, podcaster, and a photographer who works internationally. Cindy has extensive experiences in the real estate industry, from working as a real estate agent to an award-winning 6-figure home stager in the San Francisco Bay Area. Now, a highly sought-after home staging educator whose posts included the University of Arts in London. Combined with her experiences in other creative and business sectors, she brings a unique blend of perspective to her teaching. She's been voted one of the top 75 most influential people in home staging by Real Estate Staging Association several years in a row. Stage for More has been named number 3 of the top 100 home staging blogs and websites for home stagers since 2018. Cindy also hosts the Home Staging Show podcast. It's the longest running and the number 1 podcast on iTunes dedicated to home staging. Cindy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited that you said yes. So first, just for the audience, I'm going to say that we first met, I don't know, maybe a couple months ago, and when you interviewed me on your podcast, and I just felt like we had really great synergy, and we have a lot of very similar philosophies when it comes to business and sales. And we have since had a conversation where we were talking about maybe doing some collaboration with some of the stuff that you've got going on, really exciting stuff in your business. And it was really through that conversation that allowed for me to get to know you better and really see what you have accomplished is quite amazing. And so the topic that I asked you to come on and talk about around mastering excellence, I think is one that will really resonate for many of my listeners, because it's this idea that learning how to, or kind of getting into your head and finding out a little bit about your structure for your ability to push through a stereotype to achieve success. I feel like you've done this in many examples in your life. So that's what I want to talk to you about today.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an interesting topic. I actually never thought about it before. I don't really progress in my life thinking about the stereotypes I fit in or I don't fit in. I know that even within my own family, I'm a bit of a black sheep. I think also, I grew up, so to give people a little bit of background for those who don't know me, I was born and raised in Taiwan, and I didn't move to the States till I was 15 years old. And in my culture, it was, in a sense, it's better now, but at the time, my parents' generation, it was still very much focused on the male of the family. It was very, a strong patriarchy. So women really wasn't valued in the home in the sense that, my grandmother, when I was a kid, she would say to me, oh, well, girls don't really need to study. You just need to be smart enough to be a wife, kind of thing. Even though she had considered at the time, fairly highly educated herself. So it wasn't really a priority in the sense, in terms of for women growing up in kind of my traditional family. But both my parents, but not both my parents, like my family within my, nuclear family, we had two girls. My parents had two girls. For me, it wasn't really about, being a man or not, or maybe it's because that background, I felt in a way overcompensating for being a woman instead of a man. I felt that because I was a daughter and my father wanted a son so much, I feel like in a way I overcompensate for that. I wanted to be a child that he was really proud of, because it was something that it's very, deeply ingrained in our society at the time, that having son is better than having a daughter. So, even when people have their, newborn, people tend to celebrate, wow, that congratulations, you had a son. And then when people hear that you have a daughter, they usually say something that's a little bit more like comforting, like, oh, daughters are great also, so like it's something that it's already implied and then kind of wired into the society. And so for me, I didn't really grow up thinking I was less than a man, but I definitely felt the difference. And I think I'm lucky in the sense my parents didn't really put a strong emphasis on that when I was growing up. Both my parents were very independent people. My mother especially, she actually also went against the grain, because a lot of times women were expected to be a full-time mom, be a full-time wife, basically giving up the career. But my mom worked very hard for her career. She was a doctor. When she was studying in the medical school, at the time, Taiwan was not considered a developed country. So we didn't really have resources like in Western society where people would donate their bodies. Also, it's a cultural, people wouldn't really donate their body after they died for dissection. So a lot of times my mom and her classmate had to go to graveyard to dig up graves and then look at bodies and stuff. It sounds horrifying, but that's how much my mom wanted to be a doctor. And she was committed. And that was what you needed to do to succeed and to get what you want. Even if you didn't born, in wealth, which my mother didn't. To give people a perspective, after World War II, Taiwan had a really hard time in terms of recovery. There was huge inflation. In California, you think $5 a gallon for gas is insane. But at a time, $40,000 to get one new Taiwanese dollar, you need to trade in $40,000. So it was extreme inflation. And so it was really rough. And my mom did not grow up in a well-to-do family. She really had to fight for herself. She was right in the middle. There was 4 other siblings. She was the third one. And as an older sibling, you had to take care of, your younger sibling. And so my mom basically put herself through her childhood, basically, because my grandparents were very busy trying to establish their career and make money for the family to raise the family. At the time, everyone had a fairly large family. My mom's family was considered fairly, I guess, medium sized. They only have 5 children. But my dad, for example, he's 1 out of 7. So it was, they had to really fight for what I wanted. And I think because of that, I really saw something early on in childhood that my mom was able to pursue her passion. Like, she was a dentist, she really enjoyed it. Dentistry was important. So even though it went against the stereotype or what was expected after she was married, which was giving up her clinic, she kept going. Like, she worked part-time, but still she kept going. She still had patients that she worked with. And I think to see that from an early age was very inspiring. I didn't even realize it, I think, until now as an adult having my own business. I didn't realize how impactful that was to me. And I'm grateful actually for both my parents for, both of them were entrepreneurs. They both had their own businesses, not obviously, but both of them had their own businesses, and they were at very different scale. My mom was a 1-person shop. My dad had a company with staff, with multiple locations. So it was a really good way for me to see early on how to live with entrepreneurship. What is it like to be an entrepreneur, and kind of the daily struggle you will go through. Even as a child, I really did not fully understand how much pressure my parents were under trying to do it all, having a family and having a career. And it wasn't really until I had my own business that I went through those pressure. My dad, for example, started sharing all the difficult things that he went through as a business owner.
So I want to just jump in here for the listener and say, even if this is not the stereotype that you have dealt with or maybe are dealing with right now, the idea here is to look for some structure. Like, what are the things that have allowed for Cindy to have such success? And she's had a lot of success, as you heard, just even in her bio, in her life. And so I just want to comment on, we haven't really gotten into the actual NLP questions yet, but I do want to comment on something that you've brought up now, I think a couple times in sharing your story. And first, thank you for sharing your story, because one, it is inspiring. And also you can hear the struggle, right? Like, you can hear the hardship that your family has endured, and also the inspiration that they have provided as well for you. So that's what I wanted to comment on, is that sometimes you might not have these people in your family to look at for examples, but you did, luckily. You've had your mom who kind of went against the grain and, had her own business, and your dad had his business too. But there are people out there who have gone before you and had some kind of success, which is really kind of, again, the premise behind me bringing these episodes to the podcast and having these conversations. So if there's something that is getting in your way right now, or something where you feel like, I don't know that I can push through that, look for an example of somebody who's already done it, because you can find inspiration there, just like Cindy did with her mom and with her dad too. Look for examples. I heard a podcast where they were talking about that in life, sometimes it's good to find if you're going on a road trip, you should always have a roadmap. And so in life is like a road trip. This was Andy Stanley, by the way, that was talking about this. If life is like a road trip, and that sometimes you need a roadmap. And that means at times going out and finding somebody who's already been to the destination of where you want to go, and starting to kind of study and look for the examples. And like you said, your dad even had a conversation with you and started to share with you some of the struggles that he has faced. That has probably really helped you as an entrepreneur to hear those stories. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think so. I think it used to be, let's not talk about the ugly stuff, right? We only want to see the good stuff. especially with social media. We always only want to see the good things. I mean, a friend of mine recently got divorced and I was like so shocked. I was like, oh, every time we saw them on Facebook and Instagram, they look so happy. But what it didn't really show you is everything that went under. And it's the same thing, I think, with business. And I think I'm grateful in a sense now. I think the culture now is actually show everything, right? Show the behind the scenes, show the struggle, and be really realistic about what is it really like to be an entrepreneur. Sure, entrepreneurship has all those amazing stuff you see on Instagram, on Facebook, on people's social media. But there's also the opposite, right? There's those late nights, those tears, the frustration, the shame, the embarrassment, all that comes with entrepreneurship, the self-doubt. We can go on and on and on.
Yeah, and the failures, right? Like how many times?
And the failures,
I don't know.
All those things. But I think a lot of it also is, I think it's really helpful to see someone else there and then making it happen. And this is also, in a way, it gives yourself that permission as well. And I think it's really important to see other examples. We see that in the mainstream media about, how there's not enough BIPOC people on mainstream media. Because it's true, when we were kids, all you see is this version of success on television. And as a minority person, you don't see someone like you on television or on the radio or on, movie poster and stuff. You naturally think that is the role you're supposed to be at. You're supposed to be the sidekick, the secretary, always the support staff, always the bridesmaid and never the bride. Because you never saw someone out there that could be who you strive for. And I think today's, environment has really allowed us to be more sensitive to that and then to be more aware of that as well. And then so I think that's actually a really good thing to look for people who have done it. Because that, in a way, also give yourself permission to succeed. I know it sounds very weird, it sounds very strange, but it is. If you know it is possible, that's doable, then if you saw someone else have done it and they were successful, then it works. I remember I went to this talk from this local entrepreneur, bar method, the workout method that's really popular, where it's combining the ballet bar movement with Pilates. This woman who is a local entrepreneur here in San Francisco Bay Area, she had a very successful local business where they have a chain. It's basically a local chain here in the Bay Area. And she was telling a story about how she really loved this movement, because she used to do it all the time in gyms. And she really loved it. And then she found out this woman who founded it, who started it, lives in London and could still take classes at her home studio. So as an anniversary gift, her husband planned this trip to London and for her to take a class with this lady who founded this entire movement, right? I mean, that's really powerful because she was based in San Francisco and then she was able to go to London and still study with this woman, just take one class. It was something that her husband planned. It was very nice. And then at the end of the class, so she basically went up to pay for her class. And this lady was like counting the coin, the change. And it's like, oh, £1, da, 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 da. And she was trying to figure out the change. And this lady from the Bay Area had this idea. It was like, wow, if she could make this a business, why couldn't I? So she came back to the Bay Area and studied, became certified, to be one of their teachers and started her own studio to the point that they kind of figured out their own know-how and they were able to replicate it and essentially duplicate it in the Bay Area and have multiple studios, and it was quite successful. And so, sometimes you just need to see someone that have done it. And so a lot of times nowadays, regardless your political aspiration, I think, for me, I always think, well, if Donald Trump could become the president, why couldn't I try this out? Because he went from a TV host to a president of the United States. I thought it was quite amazing, regardless how I really feel about, the political side of things. That is still very admirable. I mean, talk about American dream, right? So for me, sometimes I'm just like, I can't not figure out this. But I think about, well, someone else could and they have done it. So why couldn't I? You can just go on YouTube and search engine is great. They don't judge you when you ask questions. You just go on there, learn it on your own, and then just keep practicing. It's doable. I think that's the thing with today, with internet being so easy and free and readily available. There's so much resources online you can easily tap into and figure out something that you're not good at.
Yes. Amen to that. Okay. So I want to get into some of these questions and we'll see, because I feel like you just gave us, there's so much good stuff in there, right? Of like, go search out somebody who has done it and who is teaching it so that you can learn it and then figure out how to incorporate whatever it is into your own life. Doesn't necessarily have to be in your business. It could be in any aspect of your life. I know, recently my husband signed up to take this baking class. He loves to cook. He loves to bake, from the person who he most admires. Like, she's a very well-known baker, and she offered this class and he got so much out of it. It was, and it's like the fact that he could even take a class from somebody who he, really, really admires. It was just so powerful. So I love that there's so many ways for us to get the resources, and there's a lot of places to access the resource that you feel like you need or want right now. Okay. So I want to get into some of these questions. So the first one is, if I were to stand in for you for a day, so I get to like step into Cindy's shoes, and I have something that I really want to achieve success around. And maybe there is a stereotype. Like, it could be that, I don't have enough education, or it could be that I am a woman, or it could be that whatever that stereotype could be. But if I was going to step in for you for a day, what would I have to do, think, or behave like in order to push through that very kind of stereotype that you've heard all your life to achieve success?
So I think one of the most powerful things for productivity is actually a very simple timer. It can be a kitchen timer, a timer on your phone. So one of the things I do a lot of times is when I try to figure out something, let's say now, okay, so we have an online school, and I'm really unhappy with our platform right now because I don't feel like it's really helping to build community, which is our main core mission. And so I've been doing a lot of research on it. But the thing is, you can research all day. You can research forever. You can learn a new skill forever. We see this in our students too. They're like, I need to take more classes, Cindy. I need to learn more about this before I go out and get my client. I was like, no, stop. You've done enough classes. At one point, you need to take your idea into action. Otherwise, they're going to stay ideas and dreams and then never actually happen. So the ideation aspect, the concept point is very important. So we do a lot of research. I do a lot of research, looking for new platforms, for example, reading reviews online, asking in Facebook group for people's real life feedback, that kind of thing, where some of the challenges I've heard, all that good stuff. But at one point I need to stop. So that's where my timer comes in. I cap it at a certain amount of time. When I hit that time, I know that I need to stop and I need to start putting ideas on paper. So I need to start brainstorming, how can we execute this? And also, I think it's important too, you need to educate yourself, especially if you're running a team. For example, so this morning I had a team meeting with our marketing person, and I was talking to her about changing our platform. So I need to be educated first in terms of what are the issues I'm seeing in our own execution before I can even speak to her on this. Then we can have a conversation intelligently based on her expertise and her feedback, and how I can, react as such. So I think it's important to do the research, find out the solution or what's troubling you, but also put a cap on the time on it, because at some point you have to put ideas into action.
Yes. Okay. So just a comment here on a structure piece, this idea of like, it's absolutely okay. And you should be doing research, and you should have a time limit that you set for yourself. So when you're like, for what you're doing right now with looking for a new membership platform, or is it a membership platform? Is that what you said?
Yeah. So both a course delivery, but also a community platform.
Okay. So with that, do you decide what your time frame is ahead of time? Like, do you say, I'm going to give myself 3 days, or how do you determine that?
That's a great question. So I want to get a bird's eye view first. So it has to do with a lot of different things, right? So right now we're launching our big fat certification program for home stagers. So we already set the timeline for that, which is mid-September for a launch. So then I need to work backwards. So when do I need to migrate our courses and our platform? Because there are many things, right? It's not just one thing, of course. It's like a spider web. When you touch one strand, there's also all these other strands that have to move. So we use Kajabi for our course platform, for example. So that includes email, affiliate program, course delivery, and also the community aspect of it. So in order to move one, because actually the original conversation was like, I really hated the way affiliate program is run in Kajabi. And so we look into going to Thrivecart, which is another program. But in order to do that, we also need to move our cart. We need to move our shopping cart because Thrivecart can also only track affiliate links based on their own system. So then that triggered the conversation. Well, I'm also recently noticing a problem with email delivery, and it's been a long problem because we've been on that platform for more than a year now, and we're still consistently having problems because we just did an online virtual conference. And so it was very easy to start, discovering the layers, a bit like peeling an onion. So we realized all these other things are actually also not performing either. So then I made a decision that, okay, it's time to look for a new platform. And so when I look at the timeline for migration, we already know it needs to all happen by September 15th. Then, so I need to, break things down into phases. It needs to, I think every project you do, you should have some sort of milestone. So when do I need to achieve the milestone based on what timeline? Because you really have to do it in phases. You can't just say, let's do it all at once. This is going to be very chaotic, right? We have about 7,000 people in our system. To migrate all of them, it's not something we can do all at once. To migrate into a new email software, we need to also warm up the server. There's a lot of technical things that had to happen behind the scene. So for example, when we first send out our first email on the new email server, we can only send out 2,500 emails per week. In order to establish the credibility for that email server in the eye of Gmail or Yahoo Mail, whatever email program people are using. So there's a lot of things that are all tied into it. So for me, it's really important to break things down into digestible chunks. This way we can progress in phases and we know each milestone. So I have these things check off, then this milestone is done and I can move on to the next one. But things can also happen, concurrently. So we have a marketing coordinator and we have a, head of marketing. So there's things that I can delegate and make sure things are happening concurrently. So for example, we're launching a certification program and today we discussed, I really want to have really fun merchandise to celebrate each milestone for our students. Our new certification is not really like something on the market where people just sit for 3 days and they become a home stager. That's essentially all our competitors, what they're doing. For me, I really truly want a graduate certificate like you will see a university offer, because I have 2 master's degrees actually. And so I took, parts of things I really like within higher education, and I want to apply it within my own school. So we have 5 phases. In total, it's going to take 9 months. I mean, compared to our competitors, 3 days and 9 months is insane, isn't it? But I really believe in it and I want to make it happen. But the thing is, for students, for them to be like, what, this program is 9 months? I mean, it's a lot, right? So we need to break it down into chunks that people can also digest. So it works both ways. So for example, we're talking about having a merchandise. We're talking about affirmation cards, because in the beginning, mindset is really important, right? For any new business owner, you have so much self-doubt. You're not sure. So we thought about having a deck of cards that has affirmation that's very specific to our industry would be really nice. So that can happen concurrently to the course launch. So everyone has something to do. Everyone has some sort of goals to work on. And I think that really helps to break all these different things down into just very digestible chunks.
Yeah. Okay. So again, I think there's a lot of clues in there of what Cindy gave you. This idea of work backwards. So establish like what's the launch, or when do you want to achieve whatever it is that you have set your mind to, and then work backwards and then start to look for what are the pieces that intersect. And and then set milestones for yourself so that you break it down. I'm a big proponent, and this comes from my background in neuro-linguistic programming as well, is that you've got to chunk things down. I try to chunk down the training that I deliver. Like I try to deliver it in bite-sized pieces because then people can go and implement and have success, right? So I'm a big believer in chunking things down into bite-sized pieces, and also for myself, because otherwise I get super overwhelmed. So I love that you're looking at it that way. Okay, so here's my next question for you is, how do you know that you're achieving your goal when you're pushing through whatever maybe the stereotype is or whatever the thing is that you want to change to achieve success? How do you know you're achieving your goals?
I think there are a few things. I mean, some people are very quantitative, they look at results and return on investment and stuff. I do that as well. Obviously, we look at metrics. But I think for me, it really, maybe this is the Californian part. I'm a Sagittarius, so we're very goal oriented. And for me, intuition is very important. So if I feel that in my gut, this is the right thing to do, I will go do it. And it's actually how I run my business. Same thing with staging. We obviously have milestones or goals that we need to accomplish with each house that we go and stage. But how do we know this is the final product? It's when we do the final walkthrough. If something feels off, we will tweak it until it feels right. A lot of it, I do feel is the energetic thing. Same thing, if you're hiring people, does this person really gel with you? Because maybe they're not the perfect fit technical wise, but the thing is, they're really good fit and culture. So that's a really good evaluation. So I always go by both. I don't really just look at one thing on paper. I do feel in a way it's a bit like marriage and relationship, isn't it? Some guys look great on paper. They look amazing on paper, but they're not great with you in person. And that's the thing, how I approach with a lot of things in my life as well. Like it needs to feel good. It needs to feel that this is the right thing to do.
Okay. So again, another really great structure piece here is like, check in with yourself, trust your instinct, trust your gut. I know that seems like a really high, like kinesthetic type statement. I'm a high kinesthetic person when it comes to NLP. Like there's the visual, auditory, kinesthetic are kind of your modalities. So when somebody says, trust your gut, like that so resonates with me. But if you're listening right now and you're like, I don't know what that means, that could just be an indicator you're not a high kinesthetic. Cindy might be a high kinesthetic. I actually wouldn't be surprised based on your background. Although you probably have a very high visual modality as well. You're probably really strong there too. And so if that doesn't resonate with you, then check in with yourself and ask yourself what are the things that allow you to go, yeah, this looks right, sounds right, feels right. Like those, pick one of those questions and make sure that you can get a yes answer, or you make sure you can go like, yeah, this is looking right. This is sounding right. This is feeling right. Then, and also again, have some other matrix, right? Cindy had mentioned she doesn't just go by gut. She's also looking for some of the matrix, some of the data, but that it can look good on paper. That doesn't necessarily mean it's the right decision. So I love that too. Okay. So here's my next question for you. What do you do to actually reach your goal when you're pushing through to achieve success? Pushing through a stereotype, pushing through whatever, what do you actually do to reach your goal?
I usually start a new document in my, so we use Notion to keep track of everything in our business. So I will start a new document and brain dump everything. And I not only do it electronically, but I also do it on paper as well. And I will reorganize my thought from that. I think it's really important for me to break tasks down into smaller bite sizes that I can physically digest and actually see how it shakes out. I'm really big on bird's eye view. I think it's important for me to know what is the end goal on this? Like, how do I envision this to happen in the end? But at the same time, I've learned this really the hard way. I think you also have to be patient with yourself and knowing that, okay, so we're doing a course launch in September and there's a certification program that's going to be 9 months for the students. It's the very first time someone in our industry is doing this, and we might flop. It's a big ask of someone, but it's not impossible. It's not undoable, because there are other, there's Coursera, who has Google certification program. There already are similar examples in other industry. It's just not in mine. So I think it's important to also have that patience and tolerance, and also, talk to your inner perfectionist. Because I have this perfectionist tendency, but I have to hold myself back. I need to tell myself that this is our first time doing it. It doesn't have to be 100% perfect, because if we get stuck on making things perfect, we'll never launch. That's the other thing. I think that's one thing, because I got my first master's degree in France, which was something that it was just really a random goal of mine. I always joke that by 35, if I don't get married, I want to move to Europe for art school. And I did. When I was 33, I was like, there's no way I'm going to get married in 2 years. I'm going to plan to move to Europe. And just so happened the school in France had an English program in photography, and was and accepted me. So I was like, great, I'm moving to Paris. Done. So I put all the planning, in place, and I was able to move. And, it took a lot of huge transition, because we were a service-based business. We were still doing staging. And I was just like, this is my life goal. And we've been in the industry for 10, 12 years. I think it's time to kind of repivot ourselves. And we have a lot of, IP that we have built throughout the years that we can actually, transition into an educational institution. So I just made it happen. I evaluate what XYZ will look like, and I just went for it. But one of the things I think really took away from that French mentality was that, so French grading system is really funny. So you're graded from 1 to 20, but no one ever gets a 20, because no one is perfect. So even 20 exists, even though it exists on a grading scale, no one will ever get a 20 ever. That's just the way French people grade things. And I think that's actually a really big lesson for me, because every time I think of, I need to make this perfect, I just think 19 is good enough. 18 is good enough. That is still a high honor, right? So if we can get to a certain percentage and we can launch, that's great, because then we have room for improvement also. And we can keep taking feedback, we can keep tweaking it, we can keep refining it. I think you need to be flexible with your goals also. Have a big kind of, this is where we're going to get to, but it's really a rough plan. Just like we talked about road trip earlier. So the funny thing is, someone in my master program, he wanted to do this project about this town on the Turkish border being flooded to make a dam in their country. And he just basically like, I want to do this. And he booked a ticket and fly out the next week. He didn't book a hotel. He just showed up and he asked around people, can I just stay and sleep in this cafe? And some guy did. A cafe randomly let him sleep in their stock room. And, with 2 cats and everything, and then they showed them around, and it's a small town. So they showed them around the town. They found out about their photography project and they want to contribute to it. And, for me, I'm like, I can never do that. I will have to plan out all the Airbnbs and rent a car and all this stuff. I need to prepare, my inner type A person. So, but he made it work. He got the project done, and now he's going to exhibit it in September in Italy, all these different things. So there are many different ways to achieve the result, but you just have to figure out what works for your personality. It worked for him. It would not work for me. I would have a different approach for that project. So I think it's finding what works for you the best, and then also figure out what exactly is your weakest link. My weakest link is I will tend to overthink, and I will just overplan, and I will never execute. So now I know that. So I need that timer, right? I need a hard stop. Stop it. We need to do this now. We need to launch.
Okay. All right. So I want to comment on some of the structure stuff that I'm picking up from what you're sharing here. Is one, it's really important that you realize that you'll never achieve perfection. So at some point you have to decide what is good enough. I love that, by the way, because I launch things all the time and people are like, how long did you plan for that? I'm like, 2 days, right? Like that's kind of my MO. Whereas people are like, I plan for a whole quarter before I launch a thing. And I'm always like, yeah, that doesn't work for me. My brain doesn't work that way. So understand that perfection is never going to be the thing. You're never going to get a 20 on the grading scale. So 18 is good enough or 19 is good enough. Sometimes, frankly, 10 is good enough. I'm going to say that too. And then the other thing that you had mentioned here is this idea of, knowing what your, like, maybe, I don't think you use the word weakness, but like, where's the thing that you could maybe have a misstep? So for you, it was like, you can overplan, and never get to. So by recognizing what is that thing that might get in your way, and then put some kind of a barrier to letting you go down that road, like put something in place. So for Cindy, it's a timeline. It's, she gives herself a timeline. So what's yours? Identify what is the piece that could potentially get in your way of you achieving your goal. And then like put a roadblock, put a barrier in place so that you don't let yourself go down that road and get really derailed. Okay, so here's the next question is, how do you know it's time to pay attention to, in this particular case, we're talking about pushing through stereotypes to achieve success. How do you know it's time to pay attention to something that you really want to achieve?
I don't really think about it. I just go do it. I mean, life is short, if you don't do it. I think one of the things is you prioritize, right? So for example, we have many ideas for our school. We even think about, so one of the things that stagers really struggle is when they're busy staging, they're performing their services, they don't have enough time to do marketing. So we actually thought about, well, what if we become their outsourced marketing department? So we can have an arm of our business to do that. But that's really a really long-term plan, because I need to make sure my infrastructure is strong enough to support that. I cannot do all the stuff that we are doing at once, because we have a very small team. It's very skeleton. Only I work full-time. 2 of my marketing person, they work part-time, and that's it. That's essentially the team. So, we have this goal in our mind. It's on the roadmap, but it's further way down, right? Because the priority right now is to make sure our certification program is launched and people are getting back, giving us feedback, and also students are actually succeeding in their program. That is really our priority in the short term, the next 6 months, to launch and then to make sure students are successful and moving through each milestone within their certification program. That is our priority. But on the back end, we have these ideas that we want to do. And so those are kind of things that I think you really have to prioritize. So using the certification program, for example, we have 5 phases. For them to move on to the next phase, they need to accomplish a milestone. And I think it's really important for us to build in gamification. I mean, that's really in right now for education as well. And, I think gamification, so like having this game element, like when you're a video game, right, you advance to the next level, you get, I don't know, you get to meet Princess Peach or something, or, whatever it is. So what we do is between each phase, let's say when they enroll, they get an affirmation deck of cards. When they enroll, they get a deck of cards with affirmation on it. And that is to celebrate their decision, like putting in the first step to succeed in their, professional life as a home stager. And then so from phase 1 to phase 2, there's another prize in the end waiting for them to celebrate that milestone. But so we're launching a certification program. Does that mean I need to get all 5 prizes in order right now? No, actually, I just need to make sure the first one is done when we launch, right? And then we can.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. I want to. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just need the first step so that your clients can have success. Or in this, I mean, again, I know we're talking about pushing through stereotypes to achieve success, but even in your own life, like whatever it is, you don't have to have every step figured out before you move. Like, it's just what's the next
exactly.
step.
And it's like you said, it's the same way in life. I'm 40 right now. I'm single. There's no way I can plan when I'm going to meet my husband. It's just impossible. I wish I can plan that, but I can't. It's all up to fate. So it's the same way running a business. You never know. None of us could predict COVID, for example. And so one of the things now, when we're looking at the certification, one of the things we're actually putting in for phase 5 is how do we future-proof our service-based business? What are some ways that we can make sure that we have income when something like COVID happens again, or the industry is shifting? We talk about virtual reality nowadays. I mean, that is coming. So what are some of the things that we can do to ensure that we're future-proofing our business? And so I think that community aspect is really important as well, because you need sounding board. You also need a support network. No matter what you do in life, whether you are in school, you have friends that you study with, you have friends that you can bitch about your instructors with. I mean, we still get together from my master program. We just had a Zoom this Saturday. We spent a good 20 minutes talking SHIT about the program. It's those things that build camaraderie and understanding and then help you get through the next phase. And it's the same thing. You need that support network. You need people to give you feedback as well. You need mentor, you need business coaching. Those are all things that you need. And so that community aspect is also very important. I have to say, a large part of my success really has to do with my family and how supportive they have been. And I think because both of my parents had their own businesses, or also both of my parents are not very hands-on parents, because their parents were just totally not hands-on at all. Both of their parents, we were struggling after the war as a country. And so both of my grandparents were very hard at work. My aunt was saying that, they grew up during the time when my grandparents were building their business. So they were like pets being dragged around from meetings, because my grandparents on my father's side had a construction company. So they're basically being dragged around like pets. Like they couldn't afford childcare, right? So what did they do? They dragged through all three of their youngest kids that were not in school yet to these construction sites, which is like the worst thing you could do, taking young children to a construction site, with like rocks and all this stuff. And they had
dangerous, pokey things.
Yeah, they had to. That was how they made it work. And so both sets of my grandparents were so not hands-on. Neither were my parents. And they just kind of let me roam wild in the sense that they let me really pursue what I wanted to do in business. And they actually encouraged it. Before I started my business, I never thought about doing it. I never thought I could start my own business. And I couldn't find a job at the time. It was 2009, a year after I finished my AmeriCorps service. And I was like, I couldn't find a job. And my parents like, well, you can start your own business. I was like, doing what? Can I start a boba shop? Like what? And it never really occurred to me that I could start my own business. And it's the same thing. In a way, sometimes you just need permission. You need to hear it and to actually register. It's like that movie Inception. They plant a seed in your mind and you start growing. And I feel it's the same way. My mom just basically is really good at playing Inception on me. And I was like, oh, well, I can't find my own business. I can't find a job I like. Maybe I can start my own business. And now, even so, it's the same way with my business too. I didn't really find a certification program that I liked when I was starting out as a stager. And now I am building one that I wish I could have taken when I first started. And the other thing too is, going back being the black sheep, there's a lot of politics in the staging industry. And because my personality is a black sheep, I just don't really run with the crowd. And so naturally you're going to get, squeezed by your colleague. People might say bad things about you or things like that. Like we just put on our conference, Stager Con. That made me hugely unpopular in the industry because I made a conference free. People who attended it, stagers, found it very helpful. They love it. But for people who run the industry or have key roles in the industry, they're not very happy about that because they have conferences that they charge people for. And here I am just doing my own thing, my own business. I made my conference free. And so that made me a target. But the thing is, you can't let that distract you. That's just distraction. That is noise. What they do in their own business is their thing. I think I have a very different brand positioning in the market. I do things a bit differently. I run my business the way I want to, because I can. It's my business. So that's the thing. Sometimes you have to put the blinders on and then just ignore all the other noises out there. Like sometimes you stop and look at it. Okay. And then you keep going. That's the thing. I think there's some certain point about your business where you just kind of have to put your, noise canceling headphone on and it keep working.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. So I want to comment on a couple of things that you had shared there. So one, Cindy commented on that her parents were really supportive and had encouraged her. The inception concept had planted these seeds. Now, if you're thinking, well, my family doesn't support me in my business, I can relate, and look for mentors. And you don't even need to go and have a conversation with somebody and say will you be my mentor? Find people who will encourage, who will support, and they are out there. I have a lot of examples. Maybe I'll do an episode someday about my mentors. And everybody's like, how do you always have so many mentors, Nikki? How do you have conversations with these people to become mentors? I don't. I just seek them out and I build relationship with them. And then they naturally step into that role because that relationship is there. So with Cindy, she had it with her family, which is awesome. And if you have that in your own life, congratulations, please cherish that. And if you don't have it, then seek it elsewhere because it is out there for you. And then the other thing is that I wonder I actually would love to hear from you as a listener. Do you identify yourself as a black sheep in your family or in your industry? Because I feel like a lot of us probably will identify with that. And so being willing to put blinders on and go forth and do the thing that you know is the right thing for you and your business. Or again, if this isn't a business, if you're not thinking about this from a business context, sometimes you got to put your blinders on and just move forward, regardless of the noise that everybody has. Because I would not be here today if I listened to so many people when I told them, I'm thinking about starting this business and teaching people how to sell. I remember a very clear conversation of somebody saying, most businesses go out of business in the first 5 years. Why would you do this? This is stupid and you're never going to make money. Well, here I am coming up on 8 years and I make money in my business. Not everybody's right. So be really careful of who you listen to. Okay. Cindy, I have just a couple more questions for you and then we're going to wrap it up. So here's the last question from an NLP question for you is, how do you know when to stop? How do you know when to stop whatever it is that you're pushing through to achieve success? How do you know when to stop?
That's something I'm trying to figure out myself. I think I actually don't know how to stop, because if I know how to stop, I would have killed my business years ago. And I think it's the stubbornness of not knowing how to stop it. I don't know. I don't really think of it as a stop. I think more of it's a pivoting kind of thing, because we did pivot from a service-based business into a international and complete online business that is focusing on education. So I just get this idea in my head and I just knew that it feels right for me to pursue, and I find ways to make it work. I think it's really important to do work that you find fulfilling, because we spend so much time at work, right? 8 hours a day at least. So it's essentially a third of our lifetime. So I think you really have to do work that inspires you, that drives you, and that feeds your passion and feeds your soul. So, for example, I also work as a photographer. I have an art photography practice. A lot of my project really has to do with social issues. I was an immigrant, also a woman and minority. So most of my projects about that, using still life to tell those social issues through storytelling. And that's really important aspect of my life. And it's really hard to run a business while in a full-time master program.